Good morning. As we combine Sunday, Monday readings, we'll be looking at Numbers 17 through 22. We're going to leave chapter 22 for sure for tomorrow, but we'll look briefly at these others. And chapter 17, Moses doesn't quite listen to God, and the headline or the header in my Bible in the house was Moses' error, or the error that Moses committed. And the people have been, that's chapter 18, sorry, going on. But anyway, in chapter 17, the Lord speaks to Moses and says to have one member, the lead member of each of the 12 tribes, take a staff, a rod, a branch, and put their names on them and bring them to the temple. And overnight, the one of Aaron's that has Aaron's name on it sprouts, blossoms, has fully mature almonds on it. I mean, this is quite an astounding growth in one night's time from a staff, a walking staff that was basically a dead stick. And it was to show that Aaron and the Levites were indeed God's chosen to be the priestly tribe, and that Aaron was chosen to be the leader of this priestly tribe. And so they put all these staffs in there, and chapter verse 8, Moses went in the next day, and the staff of Aaron had sprouted, had put forth buds, produced blossoms, and bore ripe almonds. What a miracle! God's way of showing Aaron is the one I choose. And so then we get into chapter 18 are the priestly duties of Aaron and the tribe of Levite, the priests, and of making people clean, and of all doing all of the sacrifices and the rituals that way. And we've gone through a lot of those, several times that way. Chapter 19 deals with the rites of purification after someone has been defiled, made unclean, by being in the presence of a corpse. And I think about that, and I mean, I've been in the presence of many corpses, dead bodies, and with funerals and in the nursing homes, hospitals as people have died, and in his funeral home, and I've never felt that I've been made unclean, defiled, unfit to be in the presence of others because of that. I know there are a lot of people that are really uncomfortable being around the body of a person who has died, and there was a person one time that had applied for a job at a funeral home and said, well, but I won't ever be here alone when there's a body in here. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, because the funeral director wouldn't always be there. But needless to say, that person withdrew and decided, no, I can't do that because of that hesitancy. But just because the person's spirit has left and the life has left that body, doesn't make it so that we can't, appreciate and be there and to touch and to say our final goodbyes. But in this day, when God was leading the people, He said, if you are in a tent when someone dies, if you come to visit, in the tent in someone's house after the person has died, you will be ceremoniously unclean for 7 days. So for that week's time, and this kind of comes to where there was a week's time of mourning, but they didn't have all of the embalming and everything that we have today. So quite often, if someone died, they were buried, that very day. And you think about Jesus dying on the cross, and Joseph of Arimathea and others came, to bury Jesus' body, immediately that day, rather than wait, because they couldn't do it on the Sabbath, but it was to get it done right away. And the story of Lazarus' death, when Mary and Martha say, but Jesus, he's been dead for 4 days, he's gonna be a stench. And those things happen. But so God is giving them, this law of how that you are unclean, you're defiled for this period of time. But then the way of purification, to what they have to do for the cleansing, and to then again be purified so that they can go to the tabernacle to worship, and they can be in the presence of other people. Chapter 20 is where Moses' error against God occurs. I was jumping ahead of myself in 17, but the Israelites have been on the move now. I mean, for quite a while, they'd been, a little over a year in the plain of Sinai, by Mount Sinai, and then they had moved and spent some time in another area for an extended length, but the people are moving. And it says when the whole congregation came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month, they stayed at Kadesh, and the first thing we hear about, Miriam died. This is Aaron's wife. Miriam died and was buried there. And so there were, as the people were moving, they continually had people dying, just as we do today. And because of their sin, because of their not trusting God, none of that first generation, arrived at the promised land, because of their disobedience of God and stuff, is what we learn in the Bible. But so the people were complaining against Moses and Aaron, and it says they quarreled with them. It was, we should have just stayed in Egypt. This is a couple years later. They're still, man, we had it so much better, And it's like remembering the good old days, Well, the good old days weren't always so awful good, And I've had people tell me that, and people that have lived through the good old days, whenever they may have been. But we forget some of the things in the past. And that's good that we don't recall everything, because not everything is good to have at the top of our minds that way. But the people were complaining because, they were short of water. So Moses calls upon God, Moses and Aaron, and God says, this is what I'm going to do. You go and he says, take your staff and command the water to come out of the rock. And Moses and Aaron go to this rock, and they gather the people around. And it says in the Bible, Moses tapped the rock twice with his staff, and water came out. And then we read, God was displeased with Moses because Moses didn't do what he told him. Moses was supposed to command the water to come from the rock, not strike it twice with the staff. Seems like a minor point. But I think that part of it is that God is showing us that when he says something, this is what he wants us to do. It's like when he says, remember my name to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Do not take my name in vain. Do not kill. Do not murder. Do not covet. God is saying these things to us because we're supposed to follow him. And the punishment that Moses gets from this is that then he won't get to the promised land. Moses will not lead the people into the final promised land. And we know that, from reading the Bible and Bible history. I hope that you know that anyway. We'll find out for sure later on when we get to that. But so Moses didn't quite follow God's command, what God told him to do. But the water came, and people were satisfied with the water. They had animal water for their livestock, for their sheep, for the cattle, for everything that they had along, and things were good again. And the rest of chapter 20 and much of 21 deal, and 22 as well. We're not going to get into that, as I said today, but they deal with the people traveling from here to there to there to there to there and back and forth, and some of the other troubles that they come upon in the way. And chapter 20, verse 14, Moses sends messengers to the king of Edom and says, we, the Israelites, we would like to travel through your land. We will stay on the highway. We won't get into the fields. We won't plunder your fields. We won't plunder your stock. We won't come into your cities. We won't affect you in any other way other than we want to travel through your land. We want to go from Minnesota to Montana through North Dakota, and the governor says nope. And the king of Edom sent soldiers. He sent troops there to guard his border so that the Israelites wouldn't come in and go through there. And verse 18, but Edom said, you shall not pass through, or we will come out with sword against you. this is not just a please don't, but definitely not. We're not going to let you do that. So they set out and they went through a different way. Verse 21 says, so Israel turned away from them, and they went from Kadesh to Mount Hor, and when they got to Mount Hor, God says to Moses, take Abraham and his son Eleazar up on the mountain. And when you're up on the mountain, take the priestly garments from Aaron and put them upon Eleazar, because it is time for that mantle to pass from Aaron being the leader of the tribe of the Levites to Eleazar, and Aaron will die there on the mountain. And that happens. Aaron passes away up on the mountain. And God, it's another one of those ways that God works that we don't understand. Aaron had supposedly been quite healthy. He'd been traveling and moving and everything, but it was a time that God said for the mantle to pass from Aaron to Eleazar, and they accepted that. Aaron and Eleazar and Moses went up on a mountain, and he did, and so then it says that when Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, the congregation saw that Aaron had died. The whole congregation of Israel, the whole tribe, mourned for 30 days. This is what we do when one of our major national leaders dies or something. We fly the flags at half mast. We have a time of national mourning, and this is what the Israelites did there. Chapter 21, just real briefly, I see we're well into 12, 13 minutes. Again, is just, the Israelites are moving through different areas and have some battles with some different people, and the Israelites come to one place where this other leader takes some of them captive, and the Israelites say to God, if you give us this land, we will destroy all of the people and all of the cities. And God says, this I will do. And the Israelites are successful in that, and they kill all the people and destroy all the cities. And it's one of those places in the Bible that my father-in-law Frank would always say, I don't understand why God does that thing that way. There should have been room for all of them. And how do you argue that point? But it's God showing the world that he had chosen his people Israel, and that he was going to provide for them. And he does that with us. He promises to be with us and to lead us and to guide us. And sometimes where we get led are different difficult journeys to take. And I think of Mandy and her family again today, as I always do, and the difficult journey that they have been upon these last 5 years, and just continue. And I encourage you to pray for Mandy and Ryan and the girls, and for Russ and Beryl and the whole family that way. So God's blessings this day as always.